There we go. All right. So I'm going to record all of our classes here, and I'm going to put them as a video on our YouTube channel, and I'll link it every week when I send out my weekly email. If you want to go back and review anything, you can go back and review it. And if you are absent, it'll be right there. We are live right now on Zoom. So if you're home and you're sick, you can always tune in. Or if you're on vacation or traveling, you can always tune in. And if you just, can't be here for whatever reason, you can watch it later. You can watch it live. If you're live, I'll try to start talking to you. Cool. First, I did unmute you. All right, good. There you are. So first lesson here. So we talked about in the pre-lesson, what's science? This is just to make sure you know kind of what you're doing. For some people, this is their first science. And for some people, this is their first co-op. So science really is about getting information, organizing it, and finding a way to look through it that is logical and methodical. Like in science, we don't bounce around. We try and keep our train of thought and our reasoning very logical. Because if you skip steps and get all crazy, you'll get lost in the process. It really is about the way you think, though. If you think scientifically, you can apply it to just about anything. So in science, we do have goals. So we're always going to try to investigate and understand nature and events in nature. And we're going to use those explanations to make predictions. So if you were a weatherman or a weather lady or whatever, a meteorologist,
get a new job.
Yeah, probably, because they don't ever seem to be right, do they? But then what they do is they've gathered lots of information. So if they're gathering information, pressure, temperature, wind speed, all this stuff, right? And then it rains. Okay, so if I put the information I got before and the rain together, maybe I can make a correlation. And maybe the next time I see similar pressure and temperature and wind speed, I can predict that it might rain again, right? And that's the whole point of science. It's so that we can use what we know and what we've learned to help us predict what's going to happen next. So you guys probably saw scientific method. And this is what I was saying in the video. It's not really so step by step that it never changes. The important things in scientific method are that you have a hypothesis. Who can tell me what a hypothesis is? Darcy, you go.
A hypothesis is making a guess at what might happen.
Yeah, it is. It's a guess. That's great. That's exactly what it is. It's a guess about what may happen. So it's always about a hypothesis. And then it's usually about how you go about your experimental method, which sometimes is in a lab and sometimes it's just observing data. There's lots of ways to go about it. But variables, we're going to get to variables in a minute, and variables are super duper important. So here are variables. We have 3 different kinds of variables. And this applies to everything in life, really. You've got your dependent variables, your independent variables, and your control. So I like to think about it as your independent variable. That's the thing you're changing. It's independent from everything else. And then your dependent variables, those are the things that change based on what you changed. And then your controls are what you're keeping the same. So let's say you get headaches and you don't like them. And you want to make the headaches go away. So you decide that you're going, and you read a bunch of stuff online about how to make headaches go away. So you're going to get Tylenol, you're going to get peppermint oil, you're going to go to a dark room, and you're going to put an ice pack behind your neck. All right, so you do all of the above, and your headache's gone. You go in a dark room with your Tylenol and your ice pack behind your neck, and you're like, yeah, I'm good, and your headache's gone. Do you know which of those things made your headache go away? Can you tell what made it go away? Most likely, but can you tell for sure? Drew, what do you think?
Probably all of them.
It could be all of them, but the problem is what you did is you introduced too many variables. So if you get a headache on Monday and you take only Tylenol and you do nothing else and your headache goes away, then you could say, all right, that might work. But if you get a headache on Tuesday and you go to the dark room and that's all you do, and your headache doesn't go away, then you go, okay, maybe that doesn't contribute. What you need to do is test one thing at a time, one variable at a time. And that's how you'll find out what's really contributing to getting your headache to go away. And then you have to repeat it. We have to remember that hypotheses have to be repeatable. So they're ideas that can be tested, or a guess about what might happen. and they're either accepted or rejected, we try not to say true or untrue. Like you could say, oh, it's true that if I took Tylenol, my headache went away. But we try to say my hypothesis was accepted. It's just better language for science. And then you have to be able to repeat it. So if you take Tylenol every time you have a headache and it goes away every time, that's probably what's contributing. Or if you go in a dark room every time and it doesn't fix it, then you can go, okay, going in a dark room probably doesn't fix my headache. Maybe you heard that standing on your head can make your hiccups go away. And if you try that every time and it works, then you go, well, maybe that works. I've never tried that one. I know one that does work, but I won't tell you because it'll ruin it. If you ever get the hiccups, I'll do it and it works. So yeah, sometimes people do that. So science and context. So these are two very important points. Scientific theory, scientific law. This, I will tell you right now, here's a little hint. This will show up on almost every exam you take with me. So if you take a midterm or a final, it's going to be there. And sometimes it'll show up as an extra credit question. Sometimes it'll be like a little short essay. It's always there because I want you to memorize it for the rest of your life. And it is that scientific theories explain what happens and scientific law explains why it happens. Right, exactly. So a really good example that will come up in biology is the concept of evolution. Okay, so we see evolution happen. You can see evolution happen in real time. There are some moths in particular, all right, who we'll talk about later. We're going to do a lab about them later. But there were these moths in England right at the turn of the Industrial Revolution, and there was a population of moths that were a particular color. And then some things happened that changed their environment, and that population of moths almost entirely became a different color. And there's a very clear reason as to why that happened, but that's evolution. You see a change in that population over time. And we know that it does happen. Now, why does it happen? That's the question. So the theory as to why it happens is the natural selection theory, which we'll get to, and that's Darwin. And that's the explanation for why. You can think about gravity too. Gravity is one that's a theory and a law. If I hold a ball and let it go, it's going down to the ground. It's going towards the center of the earth, right? Always. It's never going to go floating up. That's not ever going to happen. So that's a law. Oh, those are backwards. Look at that. Those are backwards. Yeah, fix that. Anyway, so it's going to do that every time. That's what's happening. And then your why is, well, there's this whole theory as to why. It gets really complicated. So what's science bias? What's a bias? Do you know what a bias is? Remember what a bias is? We all have a bias. What do you think, Drew?
Bias is basically when you're favor to one side and you don't let the other side have any views.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you're looking for a certain result or a certain outcome. It's what you expect to see, which means you're more inclined to see it. It's just human nature. So, and we have biases towards everything. We have biases socially, and we have biases in science too. Like you may be doing an experiment and you expect to see a certain result and you're going to look for that result. And if it doesn't come, then you'll be all like, oh.
In your life.
Yeah. So yeah, sometimes people do conduct experiments trying to get a certain outcome. That's not how science is supposed to work, but you see it a lot with people. They'll be like, oh, I believe that A causes B. Whoops, A causes B. And then they will, literally focus all of their energy into proving that A causes B. But that's not how it's supposed to work. You're supposed to hypothesize that A causes B and then run the experiment and see what happens. And if A doesn't cause B, then you can't keep pushing the envelope trying to make it happen. So life science, that's what we're doing this year. Biology, bio right there is Latin. We're going to do a lot of Latin and Greek roots in this class. You'll see it a lot. And there are certain things that if you learn,
Thank you.
Sorry. Drew had a cold last week, so now he's just got the leftover yuck. So he's not sick to get you sick, but he's just gross sounding. But you'll see a lot of Latin and Greek roots in science. So bio means life, and ology is study of. So when you see biology, that would be study of life. And then you think about, there's anthropology, which is the study of human history. There's all kinds of ologies. You could go on ologies forever. Entomology is the study of how words are put together, which is kind of like what we're talking about with biology is a word that's put together. So science here with biology, we're going to talk about observations. All right, so observations, you think about what you see, but it's not always what you see. Sometimes it's what you hear, smell, taste, touch. This gives us 5 senses, but I want you to remember from a biological standpoint, you really do have 6 senses. Your 6th sense that we don't talk about often enough is called proprioception. And it's the fact that if you closed your eyes in a car, you would know if you're turning left or turning right. If you were on a roller coaster and you closed your eyes, you would know if you're going upside down. That's proprioception. And it has to do with a part inside your ear called your vestibular apparatus. And it tells you, which direction am I going?
Like when you fall asleep in the car, but you're not actually asleep, and you have that one turn almost to your house.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I know where
I'm almost home. Yep. Yep. So yeah, because you're up in Bikini, that is windy up there, right? But so proprioception is your 6th sense. It won't show up in labs so much unless you're doing an experiment involving yourself. But you can observe things through these other 5 senses. A great example of proprioception, though, I'll tell you, it made like international news last week, right? When Simone Biles was like, I am not doing that vault. Remember? It was a big deal. So what happened with her is she actually had, for whatever reason, her sense of proprioception was impaired. And if you do tumbling or anything of that sort,
and then
well, that's part of it. They didn't allow her to have her meds over there.
I know for experience it's not a therapy.
No, it's not.
Her aunt also died right before she did it.
She had had a lot going on. So you can be under stress and it can impair your senses because it can. And one of your senses is proprioception, and hers was impaired. When she was twisting in the air, she didn't know where she was in space. And that's really dangerous. Gymnasts call it the twisties. Sometimes it comes and goes, and it's just a thing. It's a thing. But if her eyesight had been impaired, nobody would have been like, get up there and do it, blind, half blind, you're fine. But she was essentially just like being half blind because she was losing that sense of where she was in space. And it would have been really dangerous for her to continue, which was the point she was trying to make. But I think she was under so much stress, she didn't make it very clearly. So we're going to observe things, and we're going to use 2 different types of observations. Some are going to be quantitative. This is where your numbers come in, measurements, time, temperature, things like that. And others will be qualitative. And that's stuff like, what did it sound like? What color was it? What did it feel like? What did it smell like? Okay. So these, the quantitative ones, are what you would call objective, and these you would call subjective. Do you know the difference between objective and subjective? So objective means your opinion and your perception is not involved. If I put the ruler down and I say, this is 6 inches from here to here, it doesn't matter if you think it's 6 inches, you can see it, right? The numbers are there and you can measure it. That's objective. Subjective would be me saying to you, about how big is your foot? And you're like, well, it's about this big, or it's about as big as my flip-flop or whatever. So objective and subjective. And your quantitative are very objective because you're going to use usually instruments of some kind to help you get a measurement. So let's look at this guy. What is that?
Tarantula.
That is a tarantula. Very good. And if you have one or
No.
no?
But my brother, it said one of the questions in the pre-test, it said how many a tarantula has 8 legs. Is it quantitative or qualitative? He counted the legs and it actually had 9 legs.
Ooh.
It did have 9 legs.
Did it
Yeah,
really?
it
2, 3, 4,
Okay.
5, 6, 7. Oh my goodness. You know what? I think this one is not really there. Somebody stuck it on and I just used a random image and didn't notice that. Somebody photoshopped on a 9th leg. Good call, you guys.
I knew it. That's a
Y'all are
brownie
good.
point.
That is a brownie point. So you've got one and Darcy has
There's
one.
10 legs.
No. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, there are 9. Oh, those are, I think, are antenna.
Both of them.
But whatever, they're creepy. So,
Wait, how did I get a brownie point?
because you caught a typo in the syllabus already.
Oh, yeah.
So quantitative observations is saying it has 8 or whatever, 10 legs, right? And then your qualitative would be, well, it feels fuzzy if I touch it. So then what you do is you take that information and you infer something from it, which means you're going to form a statement or a thought or a hypothesis based on what you know. So only mammals have true hair. this is the truth. Only mammals have true hair. Think about it. Birds don't have true hair. Reptiles don't, fish don't, plants don't, even though some of them look like they have hair, right? So if it doesn't have true hair, because it's not a mammal, clearly that's not a mammal, right? Then you got, it's actually it's an arachnid. So you got to think, well, mammals are warm-blooded. Why do they have hair? Well, why does a polar bear have hair? What's the purpose of a polar bear's hair? Do you know, Annabelle? Yeah, it keeps them warm. Now, something interesting about polar bears. Do you know what color their skin is?
Oh.
Do you know, Darcy?
I think pink or purple.
Think pink or purple? What do you think?
Isn't it kind of like a light brown gold color?
See, this is interesting. If you have a dog with colored hair, sometimes you can look and see that, you know, where they have darker hair, they have darker skin. But polar bears with their very white hair are actually, their skin is black underneath. And here's why. Those
zebra in disguise.
Right? Those little hairs act like fiber optics. So the sun hits them and it shoots through, the hairs are actually really clear more than anything, not white, they're clear. And the sun shoots through them down to that black skin. And because it's black, it absorbs all that heat and light and warms them up, which is fascinating. So mammals have hair to keep them warm.
A lot of blubber.
Yeah, they do have a lot of fat. So mammals have hair to keep them warm. If tarantulas aren't warm-blooded mammals, then you must know that this hair doesn't have some kind of a function as insulating them. It's not keeping them warm. What do you think?
It actually helps them for predators.
Yes.
So they scrape it off with their arms or antennas, and then there's poison on the hairs, and when something gets the hairs, it starts to get paralyzed.
Yes, they do. They can like stick in your skin and
I didn't know about that. I was gonna guess either it's something like, you know, to chew off predators, because like I guess sometimes like dogs too, they can push their hair up on their back.
Send their hackles up to look bigger.
Just makes them look dorkier. Either that, some way to attract mates.
Sometimes that's a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, usually what it is.
Quite often, or it's for sensing. So here's something interesting. If you ladies shave your legs, then or even sometimes guys do it because it's sports, like swimmers and stuff will do it. If you shave your legs, you are really less likely to feel it when that mosquito or fly lands on you than if you have hair on your legs and that mosquito or fly lands on you, you feel it instantly. So it's a part of a sensory function. So for tarantulas, yes, it's part of a sensory function and it's part of a defense function. So predictions, here's our weather guy, right? And now the weather, it will be sunny unless it rains, which is pretty much how I feel about weather predictions these days. I mean, I love it. I've gotten pictures in the past of like my cell phone screen saying 0% chance of rain and it's like pouring. That's Anchorman. Yes, that's from Anchorman.
And elf.
And Elf, yeah. This actual picture is from Anchorman. Well, I love that very ridiculous 70s looking hair and the mustache and all. It's outstanding. So yeah, we're gonna make predictions. And interestingly, here's one about the weather. So when they say it's a 20% chance of rain, it actually means that over that area, 20% of the area is likely to get rain. Not you in your spot have a 20% chance of getting rain. It's really not clear. And people get confused by it all the time. They'll be like, what do you mean 10% chance of rain? It's pouring. You're just in the 10% of the area that's getting wet. So classifying. Now we're going to play ourselves a little game. All right, we have some items here that we are going to, they've been classified, and you're going to tell me how I've classified them. So classifying is really important, especially in biology, because it helps us understand the relationships between different organisms, what's related to what and how, especially if we're coming from the standpoint that there's a common ancestor, which we'll get to. So here's our first little group. In this little box, we've done some classifying. So we have squirrels, acorns, polar bears, planes, butterflies, apples, and bicyclists, and then caterpillar and some bats. Who can tell what the classification standard was there? What do you think, Claire? Color. I think so too. Does everybody agree? Yeah. Okay, that was pretty easy. All right, let's see what's next. So for this one, okay. What do we think? What do you think, Lil?
Animals, and then food, and then like
transportation.
There you go. She got it. Yep. Animals, transportation, fruit, food, things that grow on trees, something like that. All right. How about this one? They get a little harder as we go. What'd you say, Annabelle? Color. What about it? Can you tell what the difference is?
I know.
But Annabella's got it. What is it?
I think that's like a yellowish orange.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Can you tell the difference between the things on top and the things on the bottom? Wait a minute. Can you help her, Drew? What do you see?
Let me see. I'm trying to help.
I thought I saw something.
The ones at the top are small. Let's just say if they were mass, the ones at the top have a lot more mass.
What do you think, Lily?
Like small and big, but the butterfly is
The
small.
butterfly, yeah.
I've got like the beaver eats acorns, the cyclist eats.
There you go. So how about the ones at the top are filled in
There you go.
and the ones at the bottom are outlines? See, there's one way. All right.
That's what I was thinking. There's a lot more
But it's
mass.
hard to say. Yeah, hard more mass.
That's what I said.
All right, what are these? Oh boy. Things with wings. Okay, that's good. Things with wings.
I've got food, humans, flying, and animals.
What do you think, Louis?
Food, cyclists, wings,
Mhm.
and animals.
Oh, I know.
Okay, what do you think, Drew? What do you think, Drew?
It's inanimate objects, nothing with no way of transportation,
Mhm.
things with wheels, things with wings, and things with light.
There you go. Yeah, how do we move around? We don't move, we use wheels, we fly, and we creep or crawl. Excellent. All right. Last one. Let's see. All right. Tricky, 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 tricky. What do you think, Darcy?
I think the bottom one is food, and
Mhm.
then the plane might be aerial transportation.
Mhm.
I'm not sure.
What do you think, Louis?
Did they see the butterfly and the caterpillar together?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah. The caterpillar turns into a butterfly.
Okay, there's a relationship. All right. Then turn, yeah, so that doesn't make sense, does it? So let me ask you this. Let's ask about these two things. You guys were on the right track when you said, well, the caterpillar turns into a butterfly. So what kind of living organism is this? It's a type of animal. What type of animal? Oh, Darcy, they're insects. Okay, so wait a minute. Darcy was onto something. So what's at the top then, do you think?
Mammals.
Oh, Lily got it. Lily's so excited. She's like, oh, I know it's mammals. So we have mammals. If we look at the person on the bicycle, there we go. Insects and then fruit. Right. And then this airplane that isn't any kind of living thing. So it's by itself. There you go.
Wait, there was a bus on that slide. There was a bus, but it wasn't used in any of the pictures.
Oh, you know what? You are right. There you go. So that's 3 brownie points already. I forgot about my bus when I was making stuff. You guys are doing great today. That's 3. All right. So I know 25 brownie points to get brownies. And I make lots of mistakes because I'm super ADHD and I don't see my own mistakes. I see everyone else's. So here we go, making models. So when we make models, we can do all kinds of models. We can do models like diagrams. We can do models like computer generated models or analogies. Analogies are sometimes really helpful. And like when we were in chemistry last year, we did some models of atoms, like you talk about Bohr models, which is a kind of model that's really clear. You can look at it and see how it works. But really, atoms don't look anything like that. Atoms look very, very different if you could see it. So models help us understand things. So when we work in biology, you got all kinds of fields. People immediately go, oh, I'd have to be a research scientist. No, you don't. Look at all the things you can be. There are all of these different specializations where you can work in, like even right here, theoretical biology. What is that? That's about the stuff we don't know about yet. These are the people, these are the thinkers. Zoology, now here's where we talk about our Latin roots, right? So zoology is a study of animals, whereas botany is a study of plants. And physiology is like how bodies work. molecular biology, immunology. Ooh, if you're a virologist or an immunologist, you are in demand these days, aren't you?
Nuclear.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So then over here, different careers, all kinds of careers. I have a friend who his degree was in biomedical engineering. And what he does is he helps invent prosthetics. So people that are missing an eye or missing a tooth or missing a limb, he helps take the engineering skills and the biological skills and combine them to create prosthetics for people, which is a really, really interesting job. And a girl I went to college with, who was a biology major along with me, was an art minor. And what she does is she draws all those amazing illustrations in textbooks. That's her job, because she specializes in understanding what it looks like and being able to model it for people. And then all of these different careers, obviously, lots of careers and more coming that we don't even know about yet. So with scientific attitudes, it's always important to be curious and honest. Honest is hugely important in science. I think we're lacking a little of that these days, and it has to do with not recognizing bias. And you open-minded and always be skeptical. Just because somebody says something is a certain way, don't believe it until you've seen the test results. Like for me, when I hear something in the news about, oh, this medication caused this problem, or there was one a couple years ago, they put like growing beans near a cell phone, and they're like, oh, it caused all these problems. And I thought, well, how many other variables were there? Go and read the study, and it had
watered the beans. It was accidentally tested.
The hypothesis had not been repeatable. So all of that, it's always important to be skeptical and creative, because sometimes you have to think of different ways to solve problems. So we have technology in our lives thanks to science. Pretty much everything that makes your life easier is technology. Even little things like a bicycle, a pencil. These are all technology. You don't have to think about big, complex computers when you think about technology. Engineering, everything from building bridges to making phone lines work. My husband's an engineer by degree, but now he works in sales, but he works in telecommunications, fiber optic stuff, the stuff that makes your internet work. And then we have all kinds of impacts. So these are some scientists we get to thank for things. So, we have music players and light bulbs because of Edison. And let's see, Copernicus, this dude right here, Copernicus, was like, hey, I think the universe looks a little different than we've been saying for the past couple of years. Maybe there's a sun at the middle, and maybe there's some things revolving around it. So yeah. So, and then this lady right here, Curie, we'll probably hear about Curie these days. See how that's a little radiation symbol? Curie spent a lot of her time researching radium in particular. And so we get to thank her for a lot of really interesting studies on radioactive materials and how things grow. Darwin's probably one of the biggest contributors to biology. Mm-hmm.
I once read about these twins in a book, and they created a cure for yellow fever, but
Oh, wow.
one of them died.
Oh.
Finding the cure.
I'll have to look that up. I don't know who that is.
I know this. Oh, never mind.
Sounds interesting.
Never mind.
Oh, no. So these two actually, Edison up here and Tesla down here. If you hear of Tesla, you probably think of the car. But Tesla is actually a scientist. And
Nikola Tesla.
Yeah, Nikola Tesla. And those two were like battling it out for years to see kind of whose type of electricity would win, alternating current or direct current.
AC or DC.
AC or DC. Ozzy, no barking. So this I'm gonna put this up here and give you a second to jot it down. So this is what you should review for your Unit 1 test. Your Unit 1 test will be this week, and anytime after class today, you should be able to log on and access it, and it's multiple choice. When you do the test, you have an hour to do it in, and you go through and you answer your questions and you submit it, and it comes to me. Now, Ozzy, hush. Now, there may be some questions where, there may be some questions where it asks you for an answer that isn't multiple choice, like you have to write an answer down. And then sometimes it'll say to you that the answer is wrong, or it'll say manually graded. And that just means I have to go back and look at it, because sometimes it'll say, give me 3 examples of X, Y, Z. Yeah, well, I can't possibly guess what everybody's examples will be. So I can't put those in as Okay, I can't put them in as auto graded. So if it does that, don't freak out. The grade that you get on the test isn't final until I send it back to you. So I will grade it and then I will send it back to you. And that's when you'll get your final grade on that test. Okay. So here are the things that you're going to need to study. And you may want to write this down with a pencil or something in your notebook. So we're going to want to study the 3 types of variables, which were dependent, independent, and controlled, right? And what's a hypothesis? And this also is, you can always just, I'll probably send this to you guys as well as a screenshot, but still good to have. Metric conversions. So metric conversions we didn't talk about today, but they were in your pre-lesson, right? And it talked about meters, kilometers. As we use them, you'll kind of get to learn them as we go. It's a little easier to do it in practice than to just explain it, but understand what they are and know that if you're multiplying by 10, you move one direction, and dividing by 10, you move the other direction. Just like that, if you look at that little graphic in your notes, it shows you exactly how they work. Scientific method. Controlled experiments, again, limiting your variables. Scientific theory versus scientific law. This is the first time it's going to show up on a test. It is not the last time. Promise you that. You'll see it a lot.
Yep.
Observations and inferences. Scientific attitudes. Everything that's on your test is always something that's been right on our notes. We've gone over it, or it's been like right there in your lesson. Everything you need will be in your binder to study with. Oh, hang on, sorry, that one went too fast. So that's all that's on. That's all you need to study, those concepts right there. So unit 1 is just basically this: how do we do science? What's biology? And then we get into the meat of it next week. Like we really get into the meat of it. We start talking about ecology being our first unit, which will be a lot of fun. Ecology is a fun unit. So I'll leave this up for a minute for you guys to get that written down, and then we'll gather everybody up for lab. I'm going to put the lab teams up when you guys are done with this. And I'm going to stop the share right here. And I'm going to end that. I'll put it right back up